opportunity to
Hello and welcome. You're watching the newsroom breaking at this hour. Let's start with the top focus. Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in India for a two-day state visit, which is taking place amid a rapidly evolving global order and ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. He's going to kick off the trip with a private dinner hosted by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where they are expected to exchange views and key global and regional issues, including developments in Eurasia and the Indo-Pacific. On the second day of his visit, Putin is going to address the India-Russia Business Forum, where both sides hope to energize private sector partnerships and attract new investments. In the evening at the Rashtrapati Bhavan, the Indian President Draupadi Murmu will host a state banquet in his honor. India and Russia aim to raise two-way trade to $100 billion by 2030. Now, their commerce rose more than fivefold from about $13 billion in 2021 to nearly $69 billion in 2024 to 25 period, almost entirely driven by Indian energy imports. Now, according to Putin's aide, a joint statement is planned along with the signing of several bilateral documents spanning multiple sectors. Among them is the program for the development of strategic areas of Russian-Indian economic cooperation until 2030. And now joining me on this discussion is my colleague Meher Khurana. Meher, what more can you tell us and our viewers about the dialogue that's expected to take place?
Well, yes, major developments happening in India today, as we just witnessed Russian President Vladimir Putin arriving at the Indian airport, and he was welcomed by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now it is said that Prime Minister Modi broke the standard protocol and went to welcome the Russian President himself. Now this is taken as a celebratory moment between both the sides, Russia and India, and we have also seen visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi hugging and welcoming the President of Russia. They were also seen in the same car while leaving the airport. Now it is said that this visit is a two-day visit to India, and a lot of bilateral agreements are going to be signed, and the major focus is the S-400, which is supplied to India by Russia, and India is awaiting a response from Russia regarding it. Now, Putin's last visit to India was in 2021, and it is important to note that this was this is the first meeting that Putin has lined up with Modi since the Russia-Ukraine war took place. Now, the formal 23rd annual summit is set to take place at the Hyderabad House, which is going to be tomorrow, which is December 5th. And Putin is also supposed to address the India-Russia Business Forum later tomorrow.
Right.
Now, it is also important to note that 60 to 70% of India's military hardware is Russian, and now Russia is also top supplier of India's oil. So a lot of talks are going to be focused on those, along with the S-400 missiles that Russia supplies to India. And now we will bring you all the updates from this news, as Putin is still in India and he has started his day one. Over to you.
Thanks, Meher, for all those details, and viewers, we continue to track all the crucial developments in the meeting between the two leaders. But for now, let's move on. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his negotiators are already headed to the United States for new talks with US President Donald Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. The meeting set in Miami follows Witkoff's 5-hour discussion with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow that the Kremlin says produced no compromise. Now, Trump described the negotiation as reasonably good while stressing both sides must engage. Putin repeated demands that Ukrainian troops withdraw from occupied Donbass, Ukraine officials dismissed Moscow's stance, saying Russia is wasting the world's time. Despite limited progress, Kyiv insists that it remains committed to pursuing a just and lasting peace. Let's listen into the Ukrainian president.
І після американської сторони, після їх зустрічі в Росії, наші дві делегації зустрінуться в Сполучених Штатах. І тому Умєров і Гнатов полетіли, мені здається, вже в Сполучені Штати Америки. Я буду знати більш ширшу інформацію після того, як вони зустрінуться.
All right, let's welcome my colleague Meher back into the discussion here. Meher, what's the latest that you're picking up as far as the peace dialogue is concerned?
Well, so now the focus has shifted to Miami, Florida, where US a special envoy Steve Witkoff is going to be meeting the Ukraine's national security chief Rustem Umerov, and this meeting comes after Steve Witkoff and Trump's US President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner met with Vladimir Putin in Kremlin this week, which took place on Tuesday, and this was a 4 to 5 hour long meeting. And the US has now shifted its focus from Moscow and is focusing on Kyiv, and after the talks in Moscow they are taking up all the data that was collected from there and is making proposals to Kyiv now. The Kremlin has explicitly stated that the previous talks between Witkoff and Putin did not reach a compromise, and Putin has reiterated that Donbas region is still a major aim in the discussion and is halting the peace talks between Russia, Ukraine and the US. And Donbas is taken over by Russia, but has demands, Ukraine has demands regarding it, and US President Donald Trump on the other hand called Tuesday's talks very good, and he said that they were reasonably good, which is contradictory to what the Kremlin is saying. Now Kremlin has said that the talks were useful, but has said that no compromise was reached during that. Now Ukrainian foreign minister on the other hand has accused Putin of wasting the world's time. This is an important statement coming in from the Ukrainian foreign minister, and Zelensky has again reiterated that Ukraine is looking for a lasting peace, a just and lasting peace, and Ukraine still remains committed to peace in the world and in Ukraine. Over to you.
All right, thank you, Meher, for helping our viewers understand the situation there. But let's take it on from here, viewers. Ukrainian President Zelensky has said that European Union leaders are preparing a new sanctions package against Russia, and he emphasized that it must focus on tightening pressure on Moscow's energy sector. Speaking after meeting Cypriot President Nikos in Kyiv, Zelensky noted that the measures should target everything that fuels Russia's budget and enables it to continue the war. He also expects Cyprus to support common European decisions on frozen Russian assets, as Cyprus will hold the rotating presidency of the Council of European Union from January next year to June 30 next year. Let's listen into what Zelensky had to say on that.
Зараз готують лідери Європейського Союзу новий санкційний пакет. Ми хочемо зробити його справді дієвим, а це означає продовження тиску на російський енергетичний сектор передусім, на все те інше, що дає Росії бюджетні надходження, а отже можливість затягувати цю війну. Ми розраховуємо на підтримку Кіпром спільних європейських рішень щодо російських активів. Це абсолютно справедливий принцип, що Росія повинна платити за війну, яку сама ж почала та яку продовжує. Кошти, які потрібні для оборони та для відновлення після російських ударів, цілком справедливо взяти з тих обсягів, які сам агресор залишив в руках вільного світу.
Moving on, viewers, the United Kingdom has unveiled sweeping new sanctions against Russia moments after Security Minister Dan Harvis addressed Parliament on the findings of the public inquiry into the 2018 Novichok poisoning. Harvis said the inquiry makes clear that President Vladimir Putin bears moral responsibility for the attack that killed British citizen Don Sturgess. Let's in fact listen in to what the UK security minister said.
The inquiry has found that those who were involved in the assassination attempt against Sergei Skripal were morally responsible for Dawn's death, and that deploying a highly toxic nerve agent in a busy city was an astonishingly reckless act. The Chair concludes that the operation must have been signed off at the highest level of the Russian state, including President Putin. Dawn Sturgis was the victim of an utterly reckless and dangerous act, a chemical weapons attack perpetrated by Russia on British soil. The pain and suffering it has caused can never be underdone. But we must honour Dawn Sturgis's memory, uphold truth and justice, and keep.
And in response here, the government has sanctioned the entire GRU military intelligence service, 8 cyber officers and 3 additional GRU operatives accused of the hostile activity across Europe and Ukraine. The Russian ambassador has also been summoned to the Foreign Office to account for what the UK calls Moscow's ongoing campaign of aggression. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the findings highlight the Kremlin's disregard for innocent lives. And moving on, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova says that Ukrainian attacks on the oil tankers in the Black Sea and on the Caspian Pipeline Consortium terminal in Russia's Novosibirsk are aimed at disrupting peace talks on Ukraine. Meanwhile, Kyiv says that its drone attacks on Russia and Russian interests are designed to make it harder for Moscow to fund the war as a deterrence measure. Let's have a look at what the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson had to say.
30 ноября мы уже комментировали совершенный киевским режимом террористический акт атаки против 2 танкеров в Черном море у берегов Турции и инфраструктурного объекта Международного Каспийского трубопроводного консорциума в акватории порта Новороссийск. Судя по всему, в Киеве проигнорировали недвусмысленную реакцию на это Анкары и Астаны, санкционировав 1 декабря новое нападение с помощью безэкипажных катеров на российское коммерческое судно, которое находилось в 80 морских милях от Черноморского побережья Турции. К счастью, экипаж и судно серьезно не пострадали, но все эти теракты, как мы понимаем, преследуют одну цель – сорвать намечающийся мирный процесс по регулированию конфликта и нанести ущерб навигационной безопасности в акватории.
She's also noted, in fact, that the production of fuel for Ukrainian long-range missiles at a factory in Denmark posed a risk of further escalation of the war. This comes as the Danish government announced the plan in September, prompting Moscow to say it would lead to more bloodshed in Ukraine. She's also accused that the Danish authorities are trying to make money from the bloodshed in Ukraine and are neglecting the interests of its own population as well as human rights. Let's take a look.
Первый из стран-спонсоров террористического киевского режима предоставил свою территорию для создания компонентов вооружений с целью их последующего боевого применения против мирных городов нашей страны. Эта авантюра подтверждает такой абсолютно враждебный милитаристский курс Копенгагена, саботирующего вместе с рядом других наиболее агрессивно настроенных к России стран усилия по политико-дипломатическому регулированию украинского кризиса. Это все несет риски дополнительной эскалации и поощряет неонацистов, а теперь уже и неонацистских террористов на Украине на совершение новых варварских преступлений в отношении гражданского населения в российских регионах. А теперь уже, вот мы только что говорили, не только население гражданского российских регионов, но и инфраструктуру гражданскую в других странах. Российские власти не скрывают, что данный шаг, кроме всего прочего, призван стимулировать развитие военно-промышленного комплекса этой страны. Ну, о чем это свидетельствует? Это свидетельствует об их стремлении обеспечить дальнейшее обогащение за счет продолжения кровопролития на Украине. Помимо этого, инициатива демонстрирует полное пренебрежение Копенгагеном интересами собственного населения. Я уж молчу про права человека.
Moving on, Russia says that any illegal action by the European Union in relation to its frozen assets would elicit the harshest reaction, and that Moscow is already preparing its response. This comes as the European Commission proposed an unprecedented use of frozen Russian assets or international borrowing to raise 90 billion euros for Ukraine to cover its struggling military and basic services. Meanwhile, Belgium, where most of the frozen assets are located, has stepped up its Opposition to the plan demanding guarantees from its European Union partners that they would share responsibility in the event of any challenge over the legality of such a move. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Zakharova has mocked the debate raging in the European Union over whether it should risk going ahead, saying rational forces within the bloc were trying to block the plan because it would be illegal. Let's take a look.
Противоправные действия с нашими госрезервами, активами без самой жесткой реакции не останутся. Мы об этом говорили неоднократно. Кстати, и такая реакция будет как с нашей стороны, так, конечно, она не останется, эта ситуация, без реакции и мирового сообщества, потому что, еще раз повторю, никто в Европейском Союзе даже не скрывает, что легальных оснований для таких акций нет.
And up next, viewers, the UK and Norway have signed a defense pact to jointly operate a fleet hunting Russian submarines in the North Atlantic. The agreement, known as the Lunar House Pact, aims to protect critical undersea cables and pipelines vital for Britain's communications, electricity and gas networks. At least 13 anti-submarine ships from both countries, including 5 Norwegian vessels, will patrol waters between Greenland, Iceland and the UK. Royal Marines will also train in Norway for extreme cold weather operations. The pact includes joint war gaming, the use of stingray torpedoes and plans to develop unmanned motherships for undersea welfare. In fact, the Royal Navy will also adopt advanced Norwegian naval strike missiles. UK Defence Secretary John Healey said the deal strengthens NATO ties and ensures the UK is ready amid growing Russian activity in North Atlantic. Let's listen in.
And this Lunar House Agreement means that together we will develop and we will operate a combined force of at least 13 anti-submarine frigates in the North Atlantic and High North. It means that together we will develop a new generation of uncrewed military and maritime vessels together. It means that we will together develop a new generation of munitions in order that together we can reinforce wider European security and the security of our two nations.
Really working close together. And we are now going to take more responsibility in Europe for our own security. There will be a burden shift, and we will spend much more money on defense. We will all agreed in NATO to spend 3.5% of our GDP on defense within 2035. But we're not going to spend more. We need to spend better and smarter.
And a French court has jailed a mother for 30 years for over-medicating her 2 children and killing one of them. Mélisse Dubon has claimed that her daughter, Inia, an 18-year-old who was struggling with her mental health, had dropped out of school and committed suicide in 2019. Meanwhile, a lawyer representing the former partner of Dubon has said that the verdict will bring relief to the families and the revered family can now begin a new chapter in their lives. The father of the children and some other people have responded. Let's listen into what they said.
Un martyr, elle a souffert et enduré des choses innommables et là j'ai juste une pensée pour elle, quoi. Je suis venu avec elle tout à l'heure, elle était là quelque part et c'était pour elle parce que ce qu'elle a dû endurer n'est pas acceptable pour une enfant comme elle, une enfant innocente, sincère.
Qui a fait son travail, enfin, depuis 16 ans, 30 ans avec une peine de 20 ans de sûreté. C'est parfaitement adapté à la dangerosité de cet accusé. Ça va soulager les familles. Le clan Reverdy va pouvoir inscrire un nouveau chapitre à leur vie. Il était temps. Le dossier, de toute façon, était sincèrement accablant.
C'est un combat qu'il mène depuis des années et aujourd'hui la cour d'assises l'a entendu. Il a hurlé pendant des années dans le désert, il n'a pas été entendu et aujourd'hui, après 8 jours de débat, il l'a été et je crois que c'est ça sa plus grande...
C'est tôt, c'est tôt. Vous savez, on a pris des coups, on en a donné, il n'y a pas de difficulté, on n'a pas subi. Et c'est notre cliente là qui subit. Moi je veux pas les décisions à chaud, il n'y a rien de pire. Donc elle a 10 jours, elle prend le temps, elle veut faire appel, elle fait appel. Elle se désistera peut-être, elle fera peut-être pas appel. Ça lui appartient au premier chef, même si on va attendre, elle va attendre de notre part, probablement, des conseils ou en tout cas des orientations.
And moving on now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has nominated his military secretary, Major General Roman Goffman, as the next director of the Mossad. Goffman will succeed correct Chief David Barnea, whose 5-year term ends in June 2026. The nomination is now under review by the Advisory Committee for Senior Appointments. Listen in.
אני מביא היום את מינויו של האלוף רומן גופמן לראש המוסד הבא. רומן הוא מפקד עתיר הישגים. בצה"ל הוא ליווה אותי כמזכירי הצבאי. הוא ליווה אותי... רומן ליווה אותי בשנה האחרונה במלחמת התקומה, במבצע עם כלבי. הוא פעל מול צה"ל וכל גורמי הביטחון, כולל ובהדגש עם המוסד. הוא בעל תכונות מוכחות של מנהיגות, יצירתיות, תחכום, תחבולנות, בקנה מידה עולמי. הוא היה הקצין הבכיר ביותר של צה"ל. ב7 באוקטובר, רץ לשדה הקרב, נפצע שם, החלים, ועושה עבודה אדירה למען ביטחון ישראל. אני בטוח שהוא ימשיך לעשות זאת ביתר שאת בתפקידו הבא במוסד.
Goffman, who rose through the IDF Armored Corps to become a division commander, has served as Netanyahu's military secretary during the ongoing conflict. The Prime Minister's office has praised him for his professional expertise, close coordination with intelligence and security agencies, and extensive operational knowledge. Netanyahu's decision reportedly bypassed 2 candidates recommended by Barnea. And now moving on to news from China, which has deployed over 100 naval and coast guard vessels across East Asian waters in the largest maritime show of force ever. China is in the middle of what it traditionally is a busy season for military exercises through People's Liberation Army, which has not made any announcements of large-scale military drills. China and Japan are in a diplomatic crisis after the last month when Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has said that a hypothetical Chinese attack on democratically ruled Taiwan could trigger a military response from Tokyo. Beijing has also been angered by an announcement last month by Taiwan President Lai Ching-te of an extra $40 billion in defense spending to counter China, which views the island as its own territory. Meanwhile, the Chinese ships have been massed in waters stretching from the southern part of the Yellow Sea through the East China Sea and down into the contested South China Sea as well as into the Pacific. And Malaysia has charged Shamsul Iskandar Mohammed Akin, a former senior political aide to Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, was receiving over 176,000 ringgit in bribes from a local businessman. Prosecutors allege he accepted payments in exchange for helping secure mineral mining licenses in Sabah and offering other political favors. Shamsul, who resigned last week, pledged not guilty and was released on bail. He insists the accusations are part of an attack against him. Prime Minister Anwar has not commented further, but previously said authorities were free to investigate without interference. The case has intensified scrutiny on Anwar's anti-corruption pledge, with critics arguing the allegations undermine public trust in his reform agenda. Businessman Albert Tay, accused of paying the bribes, was also charged and pleaded not guilty. Both men face up to 20 years in prison and heavy fines if convicted. And moving on, residents in flood-hit North Sumatra, Indonesia, are facing a dire situation. Last week's floods and landslides have killed over 770 people across the island of Sumatra. The town of Sibolga has been completely cut off, roads are damaged, leaving thousands without electricity, clean water or food. Aid is slowly reaching the area, with locals queuing for rice and drinking water. Authorities are working to restore access and deliver relief supplies, but the scale of the disaster has made relief operations difficult. The humanitarian crisis continues to grow as officials struggle to reach the hardest hit communities. Listen in to what some of the residents are saying.
Kalau semua paling parah Pak, karena ini pertama kali terjadi di Sibolga selama saya hidup ya 24 tahun. Ini baru semua lengkap dari BBM, beras, bahan makanan pun susah Pak karena akses ke sini memang betul-betul terputus. Kayak bayangkan aja Pak dari harga cabai yang misalnya harga 50 ribuan, sekarang pada jual orang itu 300 ribu. Papan yang harganya 50 ribu, 300 ribu orang jual sekarang ke papan. Dan minyak makan pun tidak dapat Pak. Itu semua memang betul-betul nggak ada yang jual. Ada pun.
Kalau dibilang dari awal pertama tidak darurat Bang, karena masih ada lagi kita nanti ke Perambunan ngambil air. Cuman tenaga lah kita yang ekstra Bang, karena bolak-balik pergi ngangkat air. Itu aja lah Bang, kalau darurat belum bilang darurat karena masih terpenuhi juga. Kecuali tenaga kita masih kuat ya Bang.
And last week's floods and landslides have killed over 770 people across the Sumatra island. The town of Sibolga has been almost completely cut off. Roads are damaged, leaving thousands without electricity, clean water, or even food. Aid is slowly reaching the area with locals queuing for rice and drinking waters. Authorities are working to restore access and deliver relief supplies, but the scale of the disaster has made operations there very difficult. The humanitarian crisis continues to grow as officials struggle to reach the hardest hit communities. Let's take a look. And now moving on, viewers, Tunisian authorities have arrested opposition veteran Ahmed Najib Chebi at his home. The news was confirmed by his daughter. Chebi was sentenced to 12 years in prison for allegedly plotting against the state in a trial widely criticized by rights groups as politically motivated. Chebi co-founded the National Salvation Front, Tunisia's main opposition coalition, and has been a prominent voice against government policies. His arrest comes after a controversial ruling in which Tunisian courts handed down sentences of up to 45 years to around 40 opposition figures. According to reports, charges against them included conspiracy against state security and belonging to a terrorist group. Human rights organizations have condemned the incident. And viewers, let's now shift our focus to some more news coming in. All right, and in fact, I'm told that's all the time we have on this edition of the newsroom, but do keep watching for more international news updates.